Why in Chai School Squeeze Tarakamuf, the Yapichene Squeeze Sandra Ware's pistol bullet, in Chakin, Ukanakin, or Walwama, or Shimpas Klaus, or Dene people. So hello, my name is Tarakamuf. That's my name in South Chin language. It means always dancing. And my English name is Sandra Ware's pistol bullet. I am from the Okanagan, Wenatchee, Nez Perce, and Dene tribes.
Waitaha swatch kuumso Monique Berju o Hisamachin Ushlin Tum Cindy Williams he squeezed Nash in Tupa Nashli Stemtima Rose Williams he squeezed Nash in Tupa Christine Williams he squeezed Kin Uknak Ain Kin Meepen Wishlin he in Kaluchin he in Kaluchin tit go in Jalium and Kaluchin sheet Apana Kikin Kulam ko he in Chwich he scale Chwich Waitihi Ningland.
Ouais, en Chai Squeeze Machwal, let's go so Michelle Seymour, dance I mentioned. In Toom he squeezed Lonnie Seymour and Mr. Me squeezed Frank Seymour. Ouais, and check in Okanagan, Sinait, Methu, Sinpishquaus, Hiwa, Sinpishquaus. White can sit meepen weithen nitan kelchen ala il scale gewicht. He scale gewicht it. My name is Michelle Seymour. My parents are Frank and Lonnie Seymour. I'm Okanagan, Lakes, Methow, Wenatchee. Yes, Chewilton. It seems like part of all the tribes. I've been learning language here at we call this place the Indian House. It's a language program here in Omak. The opinion here is of my own. It doesn't have anything to do with the language program. So
I will say that this is definitely my own opinion, and my perspective has definitely been molded as I've been on my journey to figure out who I am. So this is all coming from my heart and what I believe is right.
Oh, and the perspective that I gave it does come from myself, and also that whatever outcome comes out of this process in the name change, I have already decided to respect whatever it is my people decide in consensus towards that. And I know for myself that I will continue to do language and culture work because it's very much still needed. It's still needed in our communities and in our families, and just as our tribe as a whole. That work is still going to be there, and just to try to facilitate in that capacity to help reclaim some of our place names and band names, and trying to spread more education and awareness on that. That's kind of where I see myself wanting to contribute. So, yeah.
So today we're talking about why we think that the name change is really important to the people and to the land. So traditionally, the way that we look at ourselves and who we are, it's normally we would talk about the land being first, then the water, then the animals, and then us. And so when we are related to those things, then that's where the language comes in. The language is like a spirit, and every time you speak it, every time you pray with it, and every time you acknowledge that, you're acknowledging who you are in relation to all those things that I named off. So right now we're going through a lot of difficult times, and it's really scary for Indian country because for one, Trump is in office, and for two, we're going through climate change, and it's happening really fast. And the things that Trump's trying to do as far as mining and getting oil and whatever it is, just trying to get rich quick, he wants to come into Indian country and he wants to take our resources. And we have we have a political, I would call it like, we have political power because we have an economy and we contribute to it in Okanagan County and in Washington State. But as far as politics goes, we should have our name be from the language, because then when they come, we could say that we still take care of this land, we're still a part of this land, and we still practice our ceremonies and we still live in traditional ways. But not only that, our language is so powerful because it's a spirit that when we start to acknowledge that, then we go back not just 1 or 2 generations on our ancestors. We're talking about the ancestors who can't even speak the language or speak English. They only speak language. So when it comes to our identity and who we are, the Columbia River is what brought like the 12 tribes together, like the salmon ceremony, the salmon themselves, the salmon are in danger. So there's so many things that tie in for us to go back to the name and have us talk about us being one nation with the Columbia River. So that was one of the first reasons that I thought it was important for us to change our name back, for the political reasons and for the spiritual ones.
My opinion became on it that I thought when I first started learning language, I came in, I didn't know, well, I knew what bands I was from or what tribes I was from, but I didn't really know a lot of the history of the name. But I came in here and I have a tattoo on my arm that says Colville, and one of my teachers came in and he said he knows me because we're related, and he was like, "You're not Colville." And I was like, "I know, but I didn't know that until I started working here." So, and then it just kind of went on. I started realizing that I'm not Colville. I'm all those tribes that I named, and they're all brought here together on this reservation. And then another reason was when I went and I taught at the school with little kids, there was little 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids in the classrooms, and it was an immersion school, so we talk Indian to them, we teach them the language, they all get names, they get class names if they don't have a name already given to them by their family, and their first times being up there, they say we're not Indian, so it's like they're not even acknowledging that they're Indian, they're not in their eyes, and I don't know, there's just so much that goes along with that, but anyways, we had to battle with them about teaching them that they're Indian, and they have people, and we're not just people of past. And so anyway, we taught them, we spent a while teaching them that stuff, and it was crazy. And then with the whole name change thing, I feel like it's a tip of the iceberg, because there's so much that needs to happen for our people to come back to being our own people, like she was saying about our language and stuff. And I remember when I went to my first language conference, I was sitting at a table with this elder who's no longer here, and he was discussing the importance of learning your language and being able to at least greet people and say where you're from, because like she said, one day people are going to come and they're going to ask, "How are you Indian? You're not Indian, you don't live, you don't follow your tradition, your culture, you don't know your language," things like that. So when I think about the name change, I think about it as the tip of the iceberg, because it all needs to, there's so many things that need to go with it. But I think, why not change the name? I mean, I know it's a big deal, but not so much to me, I guess because I would rather acknowledge myself as a Indian name rather than an English name. Just like when we introduced ourselves earlier, we introduced ourselves as our Indian names first, and then we said, "But they call me Michelle Seymour. That's my English name, that's my given name." But I mean, I don't know, it's important to me to change the name. I don't necessarily know what it would be changed to, but I'm on board with the name change.
Me personally, I've been just trying to observe like where my people are at, how they feel about the name change, just from kind of keeping track of what's being said around the issue on social media mostly. There's definitely a divide, and I kind of feel like where my feelings are is kind of thrown into that, where I can see why there's reservations about the name change, and I can see why there's people that want to kind of push forward with it. And I see the issue kind of being filtered out through like a historical context. I've seen it being filtered out through, that language component that we're a part of. Also just interpersonally, people within their own identities, how they feel about the issue and what it means to them. So where I'm at right now, I've just been trying to contribute to the language component of that and just trying to really understand where it is that my people stand with the issue. And a lot of the times, from what I noticed, people don't really understand that, there are 12 bands and they all have names in Insalchin and Inchamchin and Dutokatimpt. We have 3 distinct dialects. It's very unique that we're in this kind of reality with language and culture, because we're not just, one homogeneous people. We're actually made up of quite a few different bands of people, and also within the dialects of Insalchin and Inchamchin, there are subdialects in respect to Lakes people and Okanagan people, Wenatchee and Intiat. And I think it's even just acknowledging that reality and taking that into account and makes this a really complex issue. I didn't go into it expecting it to be simple, and I've taken everything that my people, where they stand on it, as valid. I think all of their points are valid and all their concerns, especially since where we got to where we are now with our name change and where we came from, because the name Caldwell was coerced on our people. It wasn't a mutual decision. It wasn't a mutual relationship between government to, the chiefs at the time and our people. It wasn't mutual at all, as the word confederacy implies. It's not. That's not the reality of our people. And really, now we're kind of in that position to gather a consensus from our people and not repeat the same mistakes that were made. Not kind of perpetuating that neo-colonialism of just coercing this process on our people. And I think that's why it's important that we're doing things in this way and gathering that consensus. But me, where I stand, I just wanted to contribute to the language aspect the best I can. I'm still very much a beginner learner, and I think a lot of where I stand right now is just upholding and honoring really the knowledge that's there from my elder fluent speakers, because they really do, hold that knowledge of, what we could be called if we were to undergo this process. And it's not easy. It hasn't been easy for us working in this department. But I'm divided, but at that same time, I am kind of leaning more strongly towards going for the name change, because I think it's a step towards reclaiming a lot of identity and reclaiming a lot of political power. But we'll see how it turns out.
The way that I really look at it is when I was first came into my sobriety, my mom shared a story with me of something in her life, and it hurt. Like, I was sitting there crying with her, and my mom's strong. I never see her cry. And that was in that very moment that I realized that my pain that I felt in my life was way deeper than I could ever even imagine. And so when I went back to the language, I tried so hard to speak the language. I tried so hard to make those sounds. My throat would be sore. I would be tired. I would be exhausted. I cried because I wondered if it was going to happen, or if I was going to be able to get it like everyone else. And I had a hard time remembering everything, but I still tried my hardest to speak Indian no matter what. And that was where I was able to succeed, and I just kept doing it. And then I started to remember the stories of, and I heard more about our ancestors and what they had to go through to keep our language alive. And they were tortured, and they were humiliated, and they were shamed for speaking their language, for having long hair, for, the way that they lived off the land. It was misunderstood. Our language is so complex compared to English that we are still ahead of our time. And this goes back 10,000 years, our language. But my grandma, she was a fluent speaker, and she was the last fluent speaker in my family. And that is my great-grandma, to be exact. So I'm the third generation from her, and I'm the one in my family that's picking that up, and that's how long it's taken. And I have no idea what my grandma went through, and I can't really imagine what it was like for them to be in the boarding schools and to suffer. But I know that it's a privilege for me to even have an opportunity to learn or speak the language. I was reading Russell Means' book, and it was called Where White Men Fear to Tread, and he had this analogy. Well, it relates back to something our elder here, Elaine, had just said, and she was talking about how our reservation is a jail. We're all locked up here. And it reminded me of his analogy where he said that you can catch a wolf from the wild and you can put it in a cage, and for the rest of its life it will always try to be free. But if that wolf has a puppy in that cage, that wolf will stay there forever. And we're talking about our ancestors who were taken from their land, and they fought and they tried to run away. There's stories of them going over the mountains from the Mission to Inchalam to Nispilam, and these are little kids that walked, tried to run away, and they kept trying to run away, and then they ended up having to be forced back. And so then we got into this thing where we just had to survive. We are survivors, we've been surviving, and then the children started coming, and they didn't know what it was like to be taken from the land. They just lived here, and that's what it was. And when I see things happening internally to people, they don't realize that we are caged. We are caged. And the things are the way they are now. But if you can learn the language and you can bring that back into your life, you can free your mind. And that's a powerful thing, to be able to free your mind. And that's how powerful the language is. I've been struggling in my philosophy class trying to understand the Sama Chuchauto. And I'm like, I don't get it. They keep thinking that they're separate from nature. And in our language, Stolskelu, the word of the first people who came after the animals, were ripped from the land. We always knew that we came from the land. And we've always lived by the natural laws. We knew that things happened and we had to do things a certain way. And that's what they didn't understand about us. And now we're in the situation with climate change where, there's going to come a time when there's not going to be water for everybody. And we have the Columbia, we have rivers, we have watersheds, and we have rights to that. And I'm sure, we're going to have to all share. It's going to come to a point in time with that. But as far as us having our rights for our people to survive and for us to take care of our land, that's when the language comes in, and that's what I think is politically correct about us changing the name. Cool.
I seen, or I can't remember what lawyer it was. It was some instance though where I think I might have read it. It might have been a historian actually, and he was talking about a place, and it might have been the thing with Canada up there, and he said that if there's traditional place names for these areas, then that holds a lot of weight when you're in court and you're trying to reclaim things. And I thought, man, how that's always been the Columbia River's name, Silhuit. It's always been Big River around here, and I think that ties into what you were saying with the political stuff, is that we have a name for that place that's been in place since
Time
forever.
immemorial.
Yeah, since time immemorial. And I think I just think it's a good idea to claim it where we can.
We have to reestablish ourselves in coherence with the land, because as far as our ancestors were concerned, and this is something that Sandra brought up, is the way they look at the government structure. It's the, the president, the Senate, the House, the states, the people, and then the land. They do what's best for them, and then they think about the land at the last, which is, we live on a system where we learn from the land, we go by the land. And one thing that Praset told me is, sometimes the sky is dangerous, sometimes the water is dangerous, sometimes the land is dangerous, and sometimes the tmu is dangerous. So we always have to tell the truth, because we always have to count on that to survive. And as far as we did things, it was the land, the water, the animals, and then us. Because if they weren't taken care of and we didn't follow by what they were saying, then we wouldn't survive. And so that's why I think it's another reason for us to be able to reclaim who we are. Because the land is all we got. Like, we have the clothes on our backs and everything, but after I'm done and gone here and my clothes done dusted away, like, the land will be here regardless.
And I feel like, a lot of the discussion is around protecting tribal sovereignty. But for me, personally, I just feel that a lot of the times that discussion around the autonomy or around, like, where our land and where our water stands is kind of not at that center. And I think I've just been following a lot of dialogue, and a lot of things that come up is around what's going to happen to our tribe if we change the name, where do we stand legally with that. And I do want to kind of go back to what Michal said about how language and culture can be that component that stands really strong in legal cases. And a good example is with the Sinites people right now, and they're trying to reclaim their hunting and their fishing, and they're trying to reclaim their connection to their land. And also we've seen cases like Wenatchee with the icicle case, where they did have a culture committee set up, a whole board that was just to provide that language and culture component. And that case, we ended up winning that case, and it's really crucial, I think, that people understand that language and culture can be used to substantiate our cases and where we stand when we want to reclaim areas for hunting and fishing, when we want to reconnect with our land and our water base, and that it does hold power and that it does hold that ability. But I think that kind of gets misinterpreted a lot of the times, because people often think that, well, not language and culture alone can win cases, and I don't really understand like the full legal process in which which it takes to like build a case. But I do think that it's just one component of like many that we can use to help fight for the autonomy of the land and the water, because really that's going to be a lot of reality that other indigenous people are facing right now, and other tribes, is trying to protect their land and their water from. We're under this Trump administration now, and he's made it very evident where he stands, especially with Keystone and with the No DAPL, and also with him wanting to privatize a lot of indigenous land for natural resource extraction. And I kind of think that that's where we really have to strengthen our ties to the land. And I honestly do feel that reclaiming the name and having it be in language, and also having that understanding of place names, traditional place names in language, is really key to that. And I think other tribes are probably going to be following in the same name change process. I know that the Dene tribe, they're trying to change their name from Navajo to Dene, and that's just like one word, but that Dene kind of translates as the people. And I think that's like a really big step, and I think other tribes are taking that stride, to fight for their land and their water through the name change process.
Yeah, because one of Trump's biggest goals is to get federal land into state land, which makes it privatized. And Terkumuk just shared an article about the Columbia and how he wants to privatize all the dams. And once he gets his hands on anything he wants, he's going to just suck the money out of it and leave it dry. And I know that they've done it in Utah. They've already privatized down there by putting into state land. So that means there's no federal policy to protect any of that land. And it's harder to do anything when it's at the federal level, but when it's at the state level, the state has its own sovereignty to make whatever they wanted decisions as far as their own state legislature and all that. So, you know, that has already been brought up here. There are people that are trying to do that, even in Okanagan County. They want to privatize our federal lands, and it's not necessarily just for resource extractions. There's other things, but it will happen. And these people think that maybe, you know, oh, they don't know their language and they're hardly this or that, but you know, we're fighting for it, and we're asking the people to come together and put their input of, you know, why or why not they think it's important. But it's, you know, we're all working for the Creator. Like, this may be a lifeway experience, but we're at a point in time where if we don't do something and we don't reclaim our lives to the land, then we're gonna have a hard time making that circle.
I just wanted to add in too, from a name giving kind of standpoint. Names to our people were very important. We had we have a whole ceremony for a name, and back a long time ago, people were given up to 4 or more different names, and throughout their life, when they were born, and then when they hit some kind of milestone in their young life, and then adulthood, and then when they hit their elder years. And for me, I recently had a name-giving ceremony with the help of the language program in my family, and this was just this spring. And I've been learning language and teaching for about 8 years. And when I first came into this program, I didn't know where I was going with my life. I had recently gotten sober, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I want to do, so I came in here and I started learning, and I started learning all the importance of all of that. And then I ended up getting a name this spring, and it's my great-grandmother's name on my mom's side. Her English name was Agnes Wistocken Kruger, but her Indian name was Michwal, and that's what I was given. And it just kind of, out of all the things that I've done or been a part of in my life, that was the most important time in my life up to this point so far, was getting my Indian name. And it just kind of solidifies who I am right now and who I want to be, because when you carry a name, you gotta live up to that name. That's what it was. You live up to that name. And so it just kind of, it gives you not a whole new perspective, but it gives you I don't know how to even explain it.
A more profound meaning to life.
Yeah, like a bigger meaning to life when you carry a name, an Indian name, a family name, whatever it might be. It was the most important thing in my life thus far. So I think that's an important piece too, is that if we can change our tribe's name, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we change it to, I know that we couldn't go back to just something individual because there's 12 tribes and we're all put on this reservation, but why can't we change it to something that our people, like we're in a place where our people can come together and we can change our name? Why wouldn't we? It just doesn't make sense to me not to. There's so many things that we're able to do now as people and as a tribe. I just feel it's important to just start taking back what we're able to take back.
And another thing to add on to that too would be that out of the 12 bands, and they all have distinct names in the language, as far as
own languages.
Yeah, and in their own languages. As far as I know, the word for Colville, because there is a Colville band,
But it's Kettle River, like.
yeah, but it doesn't even translate to Colville. It's Hoyip which is the sharp pointed trees. So that takes it back to those trees that grow by the Kettle River. The Okanagan, that is a place, from what I was told, by up in Canada, Okanagan Falls. And if you go and you look at all the names, they're all related to the land.
And we down here, for southern Okanagan, is referred to as Sinkaik, the river people down here. So all of the
What is that? What
Oh.
does it mean?
that's Yashchuilchtini till Silchuit Milkamulau. That's all the people. That's at Yashchuilchtin. All the people. And Columbia River was only Columbia River since contact, since Suyapis came. It's always been Silchuit. So that's the big river part. And the Milkamulau, that's like the world, the nation. It's a nation. It's a circle. So that's how that translates out. But we didn't have confederation or confederated, anything like that. So we just put together Yashchuilchtin, because I think when you try to translate word for word, it just takes away from the language too. So we didn't want to go word for word when we were working on that.
Because you can't really translate like that when it comes to the language, because our language has a spirit, and English is literally the only language in the world that doesn't have a spirit and doesn't have any roots to the land. It was basically a language that was made out of commerce. Yeah, so that people could talk to each other. No, it's not indigenous to nothing. Waitihichumisting.
What you put?
Linwant.